Introduce a new member, Cynthia Morgan from the Chino Hills area. Morin, sorry.
No G.
Sorry, my apologies. And so she's been a council member now for 5 years or 4 years. 4 years and going up for a re-election. And welcome aboard. Happy to have you here and thank you.
Janice Rutherford, AQMD Board.
Connie Day, South Coast AQMD.
Levon Daniel, Danco Metal Surfacing and Metal Finishing Association of Southern California.
You're up there at the podium. You got to say hi. Oh, come on.
Come on, Dave, go ahead. Introduce yourself. Dave, go introduce yourself. Yes. Dave from IM.
We're helpless without it.
Is that a Lord of the Rings shirt? What is that? I drank. Okay, never mind. Go ahead and come back over here.
Good morning, Paul Avila, Paul Avila and Associates.
John DeWitt, California Small Business Alliance.
Great. Thank you all for being here. I also have one announcement I'd like to make. You're all invited to the Clean Air Awards on October 7th. They'll be in Riverside. We have a board meeting in Riverside October 7th, and then the Clean Air Awards after that. And any one of you would like to come, please let staff know. And there's an invite on the table over there. All right. With that, we'll go into the approval of the minutes from June 10th. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Someone read the minutes. All right. You get a second? Thank you. Any opposed or abstain? So moved. All right. Number 3, Derek, follow up on action items.
Sure. So one of the action, one of the action items was to email the members the notice of the Cometco meeting, community meeting that was held in June. That was mailed out on June 14th. The other action item was to, this was coming from Bill Lamar, to include in the LGSBA report an overview of the disposition of fee review cases. So moving forward, beginning in October, it will be in your report. But what I can report today is that in the month of August, and there was a total of 7 fee review cases, 2 of which were denied. One was reinstate permit, and the other one was a refund fee. 2 were granted. One was a refund fee. The other one was to put on a payment plan. And then there was 3 that needed further research that we delayed and going to take action at the next fee review meeting.
Derek, I just have a couple questions. On these fee review cases, without disclosing the names of the people who come before the committee, typically what kind of companies are you talking about here?
It runs gamut. Dry cleaners, auto body shops,
Small
shops,
businesses.
small businesses.
Small businesses.
predominantly, yeah. We do get a couple large businesses. I recall there was one out of Pasadena. You know, they were a $200-300 million company, and they had submitted their renewal fee late, and so they were asking to waive the late fee. But I mean, they had the means. It wasn't.
Okay.
You know.
Do you have and I'm sensing you probably don't have a bright line threshold on who qualifies to come before the fee review committee and who doesn't?
Oh, I don't think we're going to stop any fee review, but whether they're successful or not, that's a different story.
Well, sure.
But I don't think there's really. I mean, if they have a claim that their fees are too high or they submitted a fee on time, I mean, there's no threshold as to who can come and who can't come.
Yeah. But I was referring more. It doesn't come under like under definitions where 100 employees or
No.
14 or anything
No.
like that. So
No, I mean, like I said, we had the large company out of Pasadena,
sure.
$200-300 million company that.
Okay. Thank you.
As for a fee. And that's the last of the action items from the last meeting.
Any other questions? Jeffrey, you want to go and introduce yourself and our other member that sat down?
Jeff Blake, I'm with the Metal Finishers Association and also the California Small Business Alliance.
And I'm Phil Crabb. I'm actually going to be a presenter. I'm with AQMD staff. So
Gotcha. All right. With that, we'll move on to item 4, AB 1318 mitigation fee projects. Connie.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. It's not afternoon yet. I'm just going to give the committee an update on the CVP power plant, AB 1318 funds and what has occurred. So in my overview, this is basically the background. Back in 2013, our governing board awarded about $51 million for 26 projects to reduce emissions in the Coachella Valley. These funds were received as part of a offset for expansion of the CVP Sentinel power plant in Desert Hot Springs. At that time, we had $50.6 million in funds by the time we did the awards and about $400,000 in interest. And the distribution goals of the time were that 30% of the funding would go into environmental justice areas out in the desert. 30% of the funding would be spent within a 6-mile radius of the power plant, which covers basically Desert Hot Springs and northern portion of Palm Springs itself. And 40% could be done anywhere in the Coachella Valley to offset the emissions generated from this new plant. Subsequent project funding and amendments have been approved by the admin committee in November and June of 2014 and September 2015. We still have 26 projects. These are our funds. As you can see, our interest funds have gone up. We've also gotten rebate funds from our weatherization program, which I will go into a little bit later. So right now, our pot stands at $51.6 million. Of the projects that we have, 17 have been completed, and I'll stop right there. These were supposed to be very quick 2-year projects. You can see we're going into year 4, and we might be going into year 5. And mostly this is because a lot of these projects were not projects that the air districts normally deal with. We're dealing with local governments and other entities that
They're so slow to approve permits sometimes.
well, they're very slow to approve permits. Some of the cities that we worked with had some crises and they lost their city councils, their staffs, and it was a time where they had to rebuild their infrastructure, their political infrastructure and their staffing. And so we've had a lot of delays. And then our final delay, which you're going to hear about, which seems to be the biggest one, is Edison. Because part of what has occurred out in the desert is so much solar power, Edison has gone to a system where they now hold biannual meetings to do analysis for interconnection, meaning since we're generating all these emission reductions, they want to be able to be sure that, all this energy, that all the energy can flow into the grid, how it's going to flow into the grid, and how it's all going to work and make sure we don't overload the system. So because they went to that system, it slowed down a lot of projects because they required certain applications. They only take them twice a year, and then it takes them about 6 months to approve them. So that's, in a lot of cases, a year delay. So just so you understand the timing. We have 4 projects. We said we expected to be completed by this month. Some of those have been delayed, and I'll go through those. We have 2, actually 6, we expect to be done by the end of the year, 2 mid-2017, and then we have 1 long-term project, which is the 52-mile CV Link project, which is the electric roadway, bike path, walking path, recreation trail through the desert. So these are the projects that have been completed, just an overview of what they are, and if you see in the green parentheses behind, it's what area they fell into. In the Coachella Valley USD, we've given them 7 new CNG buses. They're in operation. Solar power at Sun Solar Power was given a contract to the City of Palm Desert. They had installation and grid completion at the College of the Desert for about $2 million. Desert Sands USD, La Quinta, we've given them 5 propane buses which are in operation, and they did a CNG upgrade to their station, which is assisting in their CNG vehicle usage. Summit Insulation, this is one of our quasi failures. We had these people come out, they did insulation in the Desert Hot Springs 6-mile radius area, and upon doing inspections, we found that their work was not up to our standards, so we ended up doing a settlement with them, taking the remaining funds of theirs and giving it to the other weatherization contractor who has been very successful in continuing this project. Weatherization has been actually one of our more successful projects, and we keep throwing money at it, and we keep getting more projects online. Angel View, which is a children and adult developmentally disabled nonprofit, has received 5 new CNG vehicles, and they're in operation. Additionally, just as an aside, under the weatherization program, we've done several Angel View homes and facilities where we've weatherized their projects. Palm Springs USD, they're in the 6-mile radius. They have had solar installations, and these are pictures of them that are complete and in operation at 3 of their elementary schools. The Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indians in Thermal, a very interesting project. It was a paving and landscaping project for dust control, and as you can see from the before and after pictures, there's been significant emission reductions just from paving over the desert. And you can see the before and after here. And then for Riverside, they did 9 miles of paving for unpaved surfaces for about 35 mobile home parks. It was about $4 million worth of projects. This was an important project because you had a lot of low-income families with children that had to walk to school every day, and they were being exposed to a lot of PM10. So this has been a very successful project. Yes, sir.
Connie, just a strange question. Does the federal land and the state land overlap there, or do the projects overlap on both of them? Like, let's say let's say an Indian gaming reservation, and let's say there's a project down there. Does that make a difference?
The Indian land, the Torres Martinez is not gaming. It is simply their community center on one of their pieces of property. There's no gaming there. And it is the tribal nation, but they are eligible to apply. So, we did Renova. We did a solar project for 3 locations for the Boys and Girls Clubs. Originally, this was 2 facilities. We had problems with the contractor. We brought it back to the committee. The committee decided that they said, you know what, we want all 3 of the facilities done. Find another contractor. So we were able to do actually all 3 Boys and Girls Clubs. What did I just do?
That's us within us within us.
Okay, well, let me get to my other stuff then. Sure.
Where is all this money coming from?
This money came from the CVP power plant expansion in the city of Desert Hot Springs. They needed to build peaker plants, and they had to pay for emission offsets that would result from the construction and operations of those plants. So what they did is they provided us with $50 million. We went out with an RFP throughout the desert, asking for projects to be able to offset, fund projects that would offset the emissions generated by this power plant. So that's where the funding came from. Let me go back and see where I was. Oh, you're missing all the best pictures. All right.
So on the Renova project, Renova was the second contractor then?
Renova was the second contractor for the Boys and Girls Club.
Good. So they
What
got it
ended
done
up
right.
happening? What ended up happening is we're very conscious of, because this was a competitive process. Everybody who applied had to apply with certain it was competitive. So basically, we went back and everybody who had been given awards and we were aware of as contractors, we allowed them to come in and pick up so that we didn't go to give somebody else a competitive advantage.
Right.
And it was at that direction of the admin committee to do so. We've had a couple other instances where we've moved money to other projects within the same contractors that had been approved that were not fully funded to do completed projects in the desert. And let's see if we can get that up and running.
The slides are in the packet. So
Oh, okay. Well, where did I stop? Because I wasn't following my slides. Renova?
Renova, Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club. All right. Then I had another one that just talks about other additional completed projects, which was St. Elizabeth's Food Pantry, where we gave them a CNG truck, IQ Air Thermal, which did air filtration for 7 schools in Thermal. And then Coachella USD, we also gave them air filtration for 2 schools in Mecca and the San Martin Elementary School. Those 2 schools got additional air filtration systems to reduce PM10 in the area. Additionally, we have another project, which was Renova, which was solar carports at Sunline Transit. Am I going backwards? All right, last ones, completed projects. City of Coachella, again, this was in the environmental justice area. We've done solar power, carports. We've done CNG vehicles and 2 electric vehicles in the city of Coachella. Border Valley Trading, we developed an CNG fueling station for about $900,000. And the last one, the City of Desert Hot Springs, which is in the 6-mile radius directly adjacent to the power plant. We've did 17 CNG vehicles to replace their older gasoline vehicles, and we've upgraded their CNG station, which I personally have made use of out there because it's convenient, and it works.
Great.
I'm just curious, what is Cabot's Museum?
Capism?
Never heard of it.
I can't answer what the museum is. It's just a museum out there as part of the Desert Hot Springs area. I think it's a municipal museum. Cabot's, And it was part of their projects. That was a 2-part project. Part of it was paving the museum parking lot. They do a lot of community events out there. And then the second part of their project is to do land stabilization, which they've had some real issues with, and we're continuing to work with them on those projects. So we're talking about projects and process. The first one we have is the city of Palm Springs, which is a 400 kilowatt ground mounted solar system. It's going to be done at the animal shelter. Again, it's under construction, but we expect completion in January. However, the interconnection agreements are not going to become through until March. So that's again the issue that we've had with Edison trying to get everything hooked up. We have Fine Food Bank in Indio, another nonprofit that provides food for the homeless with CNG vehicle. Mission Springs Water District, another solar project. The problem we had with them is when there was an unexpected $500,000 fee from Edison for interconnection that was not planned for, and that, thank you. They had some issues with that. The water district decided that they would pay for that, and so that project is moving, there it is. That project is moving forward, and we are expecting it to be completed hopefully March of next year.
Question.
Sir.
Go ahead.
On your solar projects, after you install the solar project, do you measure the savings?
Yes, on all of these projects, we require 3 years of reporting on the status, the use, and what the benefits are. So for instance, the school district well, we do have numbers at the end. We'll tell you what the savings and annual emission reductions are. But the school districts have gone further and taken their solar projects, turned them into an education program, and are now training their students on how to be solar technicians. So they've
Terrific. But are you measuring your actual electrical bill savings?
yes, that's what they report to us.
Do you have any previous results on previous solar projects?
You mean other than these?
Well, that have been in place for over a year.
We do, not as part of this program, but
Oh,
yes.
I understand, but that have measured the actual dollars, the reduction in the power bills versus the solar.
Yes. What is it that you're looking for specifically?
I'd like to see what your payoff is,
I'm sorry, what or what?
what the payoff in the investment is.
Okay, well, let me
You're
show you.
investing a lot of dollars. Are we getting a return on that?
Yes, we are getting a return on them. We had a presentation at one of our other committees from the school district, and they were talking about the amount of savings that they have. Let me find that presentation, and I will give it to the clerks, and they can give it out to you so you can take a look and see just that one project, what the benefits are.
So what we'll do is, once we get that, we'll just email it out to the advisory group, and then that way they.
I mean, we're investing a lot of money.
Sure,
Is it working?
sure. Okay.
It is working.
I guess I've got a question too, if you don't mind. And I don't mean to get ahead of you, but sort of a take up on John's earlier question.
Speaking to the mic there, Bill. Yeah.
Kind of that's what happens with old age, John. Oh boy. John made the comment about payoff and everything. As I look at your later slide, and I don't want to get in front of you, but it does seem to be that the cost per controlled ton is pretty costly here. Certainly, it's not something that you'd find in a rule or anything like this. It's not something that you would find in a rule on cost effectiveness, where you have $4 million and you have 10 tons of PM reduced per year. What determines how these projects are selected, and does cost effectiveness even enter into it?
These specific projects are a one-time program because the money came from the power plant. There was a set amount of emission reductions that have to be reduced to meet what is being produced by that power plant. The overall projects will far exceed what that power plant is going to put out just because of economies of scale and what is occurring. This is what we found out through a lot of our incentive programs. When we take individual money and we start doing all these projects, they are collectively much greater than the emissions that they're supposed to be reducing. The original analysis, I believe, was done based on the perceived effectiveness of the projects, the location of the projects, and then the cost effectiveness. I don't know how the cost effectiveness was determined because all of the projects are so different. You can't compare them. And it was done, I'm sorry, before my time on this process. But we could go back and find that information for you if you're really interested in the cost effectiveness numbers. As far as I'm known, I've never seen them. There are board letters that tell us how they were laid out, but I've never seen a cost effectiveness analysis.
No, I was just curious because, at the Riverside County Mobile Home Road paving, $4 million, 10 tons, that's $410,000 per controlled ton. I don't, by anybody's standard, that's a heck of a lot.
Well, it is, but at the same point in time, it is not public money that's being used, and it's not subject to regulation. It's subject to, are we getting the benefit that the original funds were required for?
So
based on, again,
regardless of cost, that.
it was based on the public announcement that went out. Here's the amount of funds we have. These are the emissions we want to reduce, and we want that benefit to go to the Coachella Valley. So because it was open, I think it was a balance of all the different projects to be able to get the money into the various areas as required by our governing board, to meet the emission reduction requirements and to spend those funds.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they're not worthy causes, or anything like that. I'm just saying that throughout the entire Coachella Valley, I find it hard to believe that that the elected officials out there, couldn't prioritize or haven't prioritized what their needs are. Maybe emission related or something like that.
So,
That might
Bill,
be better than that.
I'll tell you, I'm not an elected official out there, but I have toured those particular mobile home parks. And I've been in those parks. They are, I can't describe how horrible they are from many different environmental justice perspectives, from fiscal perspective. Literally families that if the owner of the park heard that family had some sort of a windfall, they got a new job, whatever, a new person moved in, the water bill would go from $100 to $500 overnight because they own the water. So they had that ability to charge them, hey, we'll turn your water off unless you pay this new bill because we heard you got $1,000 out of that deal. Now you owe me $500 for water. That type of just raw problems. On top of all that, when you can't use the water because it has high levels of arsenic, so you're not supposed to drink it. And then beyond that, your sewer treatment facility is an open pit at the back of the same RV park. And the whole time you're out there, you're walking around on dirt, dusty roads. These people were so happy to get paved roads in these horrible RV parks that I can't tell you how many just people were just elated just to have that type of infrastructure that they had not had the entire time their families were living in these horrible places. And so I think as electeds out there, it's an area that was underserved for decades. And when they saw pots of money that could be directed at EJ communities that it would score higher regardless of the tonnage reduction, but because of the EJ and Justice areas that were part of the mapping on this could do that, it was, oh my God, we can finally do that. We can finally accomplish that goal. And so that's where I realized it probably didn't have the best offset as far as tonnage per dollar. But oh my God, the impact it made on those communities out there that are still economically severely depressed. I just can't express how much it helped that community in those areas that really, really needed it. And they continue to have water issues and other issues, but at least they can drive home and not have a lot of dust, and the kids can go out and play in somewhere that's not dusty.
So you have some other considerations.
Oh, yeah.
Besides air quality,
Many.
in selecting these projects. That's all I'm getting at. That's all.
They did. And I wasn't here for that discussion, but I was definitely paying very close attention to it after being a kid that was raised in that area and got to tour those places. In fact, I've got a picture somewhere from the Desert Sun article when I was out there with my dad on a tour, and there I am in the background. But it's just an area that is so underserved in the Coachella Valley, and you literally drive 20 minutes into town, and those same families that are coming 20 minutes to town to do all the things that don't get done by someone else are driving into that part of the Indian Wells where you've got the highest per capita income and doing all the lawns, but then they go home and they're sludging through. And the worst part of that trip, I'll tell you the most interesting part, this one dog found a hole and loved swimming in the sewer area, and everyone just thought that was fine. I mean, it's just that kind of a place where you think you're in south part of Mexico all of a sudden, but no, you're just 20 minutes away from Indian Wells. So it's an area that definitely needed it, and it wasn't by tonnage, it was by these areas need help, and they got it. So, sorry, had to jump in there.
Thank you. I actually, Tracy Goss, who was part of the early process, told me that cost effective was never part of the analysis, that it was based on emission reductions and need and the other guidelines that we explained. So thanks for answering that question, Tracy. The Quality Interiors, this is a weatherization project where we're going in and we've been doing attic insulation, air sealing, which is very successful. We've actually been working with this one company, and they work with Johns Manville, and they are providing us with analysis of the benefits of these projects based on the blocks that are being done. So at the end, we'll be getting a report from them that gives us a really good analysis based on some higher, some federal studies that they're doing. Right now, we spent about $4 million on weatherization in both the EJ area and the 6 mile radius. We've done 510 homes in the EJ area. We've done 1,161 homes in the 6 mile radius area. We've also received almost $300,000 in rebates from Edison, IID, and the gas company from their program. So that money is being plowed back in. So we're getting extra benefit there. Right now, we have about $780,000 remaining in the budget for that particular program.
Connie. On the weatherization, is there a difference between, let's say, the older mobile homes, the newer mobile homes, and a house in that area? Because it seems to me the construction's all laid out for desert.
We don't do mobile homes. Mobile homes, to be able to weatherize under the types of weatherization that we're doing, mobile homes are not eligible under the programs, and it wouldn't benefit the mobile homes because it's all attic, and mobile homes don't have attics.
Okay. Thank you.
So, All right, still projects in process. We have a CNG fueling facility that's being constructed at Coachella Valley USD. There's been a delay, however, they finally are grading the site. The reason the delay is because the facility is more than just our CNG portion. They're doing a whole new facility for their buses, et cetera. So this CNG fueling facility is a very small part, and it's going to be done at the end of their total construction. So because the project was delayed, the fueling station's delayed, but we're hoping it'll be done early next year. We have the traffic signal synchronization, City of Coachella. That should be done early next year. That was delayed again because of political reasons, staff shortages, and the loss of some of their council. Okay, City of Desert Hot Springs Solar, again, we're working to install a ground-mounted solar system at the police headquarters. This is the parking lot paving for Cabot's Museum, which is, again, a facility that the city uses quite a bit, and you can see the difference if you want to go to a museum or to a city event where you can park on a lot versus dirt. And then our long-term project, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, is $17.4 million for the CV Link, which is the about 50-mile bike electric highway walking path that's going to be going through the desert. Right now, they have about $76 million committed, including money, about $10 million from Caltrans, $10 million from Desert Healthcare. The master plan has been approved. The EIR is supposed to be completed and released anytime. And the 2.5 mile early segment, they should be breaking ground anytime. Hopefully that first 2.5 miles, I believe they're looking to have that completed by March. So the actual first segment under construction will be done. And this is ahead of their original planning schedule, so they are moving ahead.
And are they prioritizing spending your money first just because we want to get done, or they have other money they need to spend
No,
first?
our
or-
money has been, the way the contract reads is that we only pay certain portions and we only pay construction.
Okay.
So it's laid out over different segments, and we will pay, our portion will be paid out in the first, second, and third installments of the system.
So when you say long-term, and you know this is long-term, how many years are they looking for the construction?
Well, I would say they're looking, the first segment, obviously, this year. The second segment, I think they're looking at a 20-mile segment, I would say within 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The third segment, maybe 5 to 7 years. And then after that, our money will be gone,
Okay.
and then they'll be doing the remaining segments.
So hopefully
But
this will
it
probably be
will-
the last project then when we wrap this up.
This will be the last project. Okay, so the other question about the funding distribution, this is how it was originally set up by our board. Again, the EJ areas, we wanted 30, 30, 40. We're ending up with 30.6 in our EJ areas, 30.8 within the 6 mile, and 38.6 within other areas, which is basically anywhere in the Coachella Valley. So the whole valley is getting the benefit of these funds. As of April of this year, this is the amount of funding that we have. We've earned our interest. We've earned 1.2 million. We've obligated an additional 1 million in interest. We have $221,000 available. For CVAG, we've earned the $17 million when we did those contracts, and with the board approval, we have put their fund it's not in a different fund set aside for them, but it's being accounted for separately. So there's $300,000 in interest that has come from those funds. And then additionally, we have about $5,000 that have come from projects that have become completed under budget. So we've got about $5,000 from St. Elizabeth's. It's amazing, isn't it? Okay, so here's the emission reduction. Sentinel Power Plant Annual Emission Report for 2015 indicated for PM 2.5, 6.8 tons of emissions. The estimated 2.5 emission reductions generated just from the 3 paving projects that we discussed is 13.67 tons per year. So when we talked about the economies of scale and the different projects, you can see that by doing different types of projects, we actually end up with a better benefit.
Greg, into the mic. Or Jeff, I'm sorry.
On the savings, or on the amount of emissions that are being generated, 6.8, is that potential to emit, or is that actual emissions?
That was the emission report that they've given us that they should, of 2.5, that we should be saving.
Okay, so how much, what was the offset amount that the utility had to pay for? 6.8?
Yes.
And is that based on potential to emit, or is that based on actual
I think that was
emissions?
based on their calculations of what the emissions were going to be
Probably
from.
potential, yeah. I don't know if that's the actual. or-
Because there's a peaker plant in
The
Stanton.
offsets are generally based on calculated emissions because.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. The annual emission report of 6.8 tons, those are actual. Those are reported
Okay.
emissions.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a peaker plant in Stanton that was installed about 6 years ago, and I don't think it's run for 4 hours since it's been installed, but I'm just curious. Thank you.
And remember, this is the emissions that we're supposed to be offsetting, what is generated by that facility. So you can see that we're reducing roughly double, just with the 3 projects that we have calculated here for paving. The other projects we have not done calculations on yet because they're not completed or we haven't got all the reporting in. But these are very easy for us to calculate. And that concludes the presentation.
Any other questions, anyone? No? Oh, go ahead.
Just once, Paul.
There you go. Kind of enlighten me. You would measure it once the asphalt is down, or on these project-type parking, paving?
No, what happened is it was an emissions measurement based on unpaved area and what we know about the facility. Then once the paving was done, we could measure what was actually occurring out there. We have monitors out there.
All right. Yeah, please.
Might be evidence, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the projects,
Yeah, press
Just
down.
push it one time on
bottom.
the,
There you
there you
go.
go.
one of the projects was the signal synchronization. I'm just curious how that actually reduces emissions.
Traffic signal synchronization reduces emissions in the fact that instead of having stop and go traffic, that you have a continuous flow, because when you slow your car and stop it, you have higher emissions on pickup and takeoff. And so it's been traffic signal synchronization has been a long time emission reduction program that's been used throughout. As the cars are getting cleaner, it's not quite as effective. However, the cars in the area where it's being done are kind of the same types of vehicles that are from the area where we're doing the paving on the mobile home. So they're older vehicles, and they're very dirty when they take off.
And Cynthia, on the 2766, AB 2766 money that all the cities get, I know the city of LA is huge on signal synchronization. They use almost all of their money for that. And they're one of the bigger offsets. When you look at the tonnage reduced on that program, they're always the big leader on the tons reduced. They can prove it with, a couple different formulas that that's an effective reduction. So, yeah. Yeah, a lot of newer cars are great at that, but it's the older cars and it's stop and go traffic that really creates a lot. So you're fine. There's a lot of those here. And there's a lot of plugins. We offset though. So.
Chino Hills, actually, because I live in Chino Hills, so you may qualify for some EFMP funds because you live in a.
We can help you out.
Depending on your income.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? All right, we'll go on to item number 5, update on state budget and legislation. Philip?
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'll just stay here.
They're fine, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the state legislature up in Sacramento officially gavelled down and ended the 2016 session on September 1st at about 2 a.m. And several high priority issues that had been building up for the final day, including a deal on the GGRF funding and multiple trailer bills to implement the budget, were still pending as of the end of the session. With passage, and I'll go into some of the details, the attention now turns to the governor, who has until September 30th, so about 30 days, to sign all the pending bills. One of the bills that was being tracked by AQMD is AB 197 by Assemblymember Garcia. And this was part of the overall climate change package that was proposed by the governor and legislative leadership this year. It was also double joined to SB 32 by Senator Pavley, which basically means that both bills had to pass and come into law, or neither one would pass. This bill was passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor yesterday, actually. And what it's going to do, among other things, is going to establish a joint legislative committee on climate change policies, consisting of 3 members of the Senate and 3 members of the Assembly. It will also require ARB to publish emissions of GHGs, criteria pollutants, and eventually toxic air contaminants for each facility that is a major source of GHG emissions. And that'll be required, those that are required to be reported under AB 32. It also establishes now 6-year terms for the ARB members. There are no term limits, but they just start having terms. They'll start out with staggered terms, and the board members can be reappointed without limit. Also, it'll add 2 members of the legislature as ex officio members.
Phil, I want to ask you a question, and this is more of a political question. As far as the joint committee of the 3 from the Assembly, 3 from the Senate, in the legislation, is there any requirements that they be at least relatively knowledgeable about air matters, or I'm just picking at random?
I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess no.
Okay. No, it's a political question. That's why I'm asking that. Because it would seem to me somebody make an important decision like that to the citizens of California at least should have a background of most of the individuals that work here somewhat. You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. That was my question.
Yeah.
Paul, you're speaking logic.
I know. I won't comment any further. I don't believe so. Yeah, but yes. And two of the members of the legislature will also serve, as I was saying, as ex officio non-voting members on the CARB board. And one will also be appointed by the Senate. One will be appointed by the Assembly. I don't believe there's any requirements for those two, either in terms of expertise. But moving on, there's another SB 32 that I'd mentioned earlier. That bill was also part of the governor's and legislative leadership's climate change package. That bill would basically require ARB to ensure that statewide greenhouse gas emissions are reduced to at least 40% below 1990 statewide GHG emission levels no later than December 31st of 2030. So just continuing on the GHG emission reduction goals for the state. And that bill was passed by the legislature and signed into law yesterday by the governor. There's AB 1903 by Assemblymember Wilk. This bill proposed to require a completion of a study of the long-term health effects from the prolonged leak at Aliso Canyon Natural Gas Storage Facility. That bill actually got caught up in Senate appropriations and was put on what we call the suspense file and never made it out of committee. So that bill is now dead. Also, another big bill, SB 1387 by President Pro Tem De Leon. That bill did actually have some amendments on August 19th, which did a few things like removing the reclaim and ARB oversight provisions. And did you have a question? You still have yours up? Oh, okay.
That was my, that was my question.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Any-
name tag is.
your name tag is up and your name tag is down. So,
Are we getting 3 more appointees from Sacramento or not?
I will finish
Oh,
telling
sorry.
you
Go
the
ahead.
exciting conclusion.
Okay.
So the amendments also adjusted the provisions with regard to the 3 members that could be added to our board. However, that bill was brought up on the assembly floor the last day of session, went down to the last few minutes actually, and ultimately failed passage. It only got about 30 votes and it needed 41. So that bill is now dead, so there won't be any changes to the structure of the board. So, what's that?
30 to 35.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, they had more no votes than yes votes actually, so.
Good job.
And then also, as I mentioned before, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the funding actually was, well, I'll start off saying that the full California state budget of $170.9 billion was enacted on time back in June. However, as you know, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund monies were held off and were not allocated at that time. Some are waiting to see how the August cap and trade auction results were going to how well they were going to do, hoping it would bring better news because the auction in May only raised about $10 million, which is very low. However, the auction in August was worse, generating only about $8 million. However, in the end, pressure to maintain programs like the CVRP, that's a Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, which were out of funds. Also, with the passage of SB 32, the governor, speaker, and the pro tem did manage to reach an agreement. And that final deal did allocate $900 million in GGRF funding, bringing the total lifetime amount of GGRF spending to $3.2 billion. It also left about $462 million in GGRF funding for future use. Along with that spending bill, which was AB 1613, the legislature also passed SB 859, which is a budget trailer bill, and that provided some extra policy changes for implementing those expenditures. Some of the key ones that would be a focus for AQMD, well, $368 million for low carbon transportation funding was allocated to the ARB, and that included $133 million for CVRP. $80 million for the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program, or EFMP, and including the Plus Up pilot project, and $150 million for heavy-duty vehicles. So, in addition, there will be some limits for CVRP now in terms of income. $150,000 is the max for a single filer, and $300,000 for joint filers. And also, incentives were increased by $500 for low-income applicants for CVRP. Wrapping up, basically there was another key bill, AB 1550, that the AQMD supported, and that would basically increase the amount of funding of GGRF money that is directed to disadvantaged communities. Previously, it was 25% total that would be spent to benefit and 10% within. This bill changed it to 25% of the money within the disadvantaged communities, 5% to low-income communities within a half mile of disadvantaged communities, and an additional 5% just for low-income communities wherever they are in the state. That bill passed both houses and awaits the governor's signature. The two last things, one is wood smoke. There was $5 million allocated for addressing black carbon wood smoke programs. And that was something supported by AQMD and CAPCOA. And finally, there was SB 838. That was one of the late budget trailer bills. That included language, this is regarding the green and white sticker programs. This bill extended the green and white sticker programs that allow alternative fuel vehicles with only one occupant to utilize HOV lanes. So basically there was a cap on green stickers that had been reached already, so that removed the cap. And both of those programs still will last at least until January 1st, 2019.
You just remove the cap completely?
Remove the cap completely.
Wow.
So now they can start reissuing those green stickers. The program will basically last through the end of 2018, January 1st, 2019. So that'll wait for possible extensions, but for now they can start the green sticker program again, basically.
Paul, go ahead.
Question for Junior and Nancy. Question for you. I got a question for you. Is there a way you can get a representative from the cap and trade and to give this committee nuts and bolts of how it works, how it doesn't work, what are the pitfalls? If I believe we had something done like that a couple of years ago, and is there a way to do that?
Sure. What we could do is a follow-up item. I can't say when or if they will come. We will extend the invitation for them to come out and explain the program, and
Probably have
hopefully
some
we'll be
staff here that
successful.
could answer that pretty well, though. Paul, you sure you want someone directly from their program?
Oh, no, not from the program,
Okay.
but let's say somebody from the staff
I
that,
thought you meant from their staff.
Yeah.
Okay. I could get someone here.
good.
To
Just for a refresher,
Sure, no
because
problem.
that's been batted around the whole year, the cap and trade, and every newspaper has cap and trade, and everybody interprets it different, so let's see how it really works.
No problem.
And Nancy, on the bill that didn't pass, it went in the suspense file for long-term healthcare effects for the individuals that were affected by the gas company for a short period of time. What conclusion can come out of that? Let's say that next year it resurrects itself, which it probably will. And somehow or another, there's going to be a program there to measure what happened there for a couple of months. Is that really relevant to anything being done, or just a study for something?
I'm not sure I understand your question. The bill was designed to have OEHA conduct a long-term health study
Correct.
so that the residents in Porter Ranch and in that community would know the impacts that the exposure to the methane and the mercaptans
Got it.
might have had on their health.
Okay.
Just to piggyback onto that development, the legislation did fail,
Okay.
but the requirement for the gas company to fund a health study is in our order for abatement.
Okay.
And we have reached virtual impasse on exactly what that means.
Okay.
The gas company is now stating that it means a little bit more than a health risk assessment. They're calling it an enhanced health risk assessment. We think it means more along the lines of an epidemiological study.
Okay.
So we have filed in Superior Court a petition for declaratory relief. We've made it part of our amended complaint in our gas company litigation. Hopefully, we'll have a hearing on that early next year, and we'll see what a judge says about what the requirement to conduct a health study means.
Okay. Thank you both.
Right, any other questions? Nope, okay. Excuse me. Move on to the item number 6, or overview of the CCP undetermined or unpermitted business outreach efforts in Boyle Heights area. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Nakamura, and a couple months ago, we provided an update on the Clean Communities Plan and implementation of the pilot studies in San Bernardino and Boyle Heights. And as a follow-up, I think Bill Lamar had asked that we come back to talk about one of the programs that we had been implementing, or we had implemented, which was identifying unpermitted facilities in the Boyle Heights area. So what we had done was we had conducted, which was kind of like a mini pilot study in 2012, 2013. And we looked at two streets in LA, one on Pico and one on Union Pacific. And basically what we did was we drove down those two streets and looking at the businesses and just kind of jotting them down and looking to see if it looked like they might be, just from the exterior, have some type of air quality related activity. And then what we did was we compiled this list of these different businesses. Many of them were unmarked, like the photo here. And so there's no indication of the type of business, the name of business, just a street number. And then we put the street number and compared it to our permit database to see whether or not there was if the facility was permitted, and then to go from there. This just shows the two streets that we had looked at. The green dots are as we went through our permit database, are the facilities that we identified that have had district permits. The red squares represent the facilities that we were not known whether or not they needed an AQMD permit. So then what we did was we did these, I would refer to them as more of a friendly visit. It wasn't a compliance inspector. We used Derek's LPA staff to go out and visit the facilities and introduce ourselves, our agency, and inform them, take a look at their operation to see whether or not they did actually need a permit from the South Coast AQMD. What we found was 2 facilities were out of business, 12 operations were not relevant in terms of needing any type of air permit, 5 businesses were identified that had SAQMD IDs, and then 8 facilities required additional follow-up. So this is just giving you kind of a sense of the different types of businesses that we saw as we started to look a little deeper in terms of, as our staff started to go out and take a look and meet with the different operators. The follow-up facilities, 2 cabinet shops, clothes drying, chemical mixing, industrial laundry, parking storage, and an auto body shop. So in terms of the follow-up facilities, and it was kind of a no-fault inspection. We provided the information in regards to facilities that needed a permit in terms of what they would need to do to come into compliance. 5 of the 8 facilities required assistance with permitting with various equipment. 3 of the facilities, one was a screen printer, one was parking storage, and then the other one didn't have any air quality related equipment or processes. Only 1 facility had an additional follow-up, a compliance issue. They were issued an NOV in 2014 for expired permits on mixing tanks and mixers. So I think hopefully this responds to the details that you were looking for, Bill, in terms of the effort that we did for the Boyle Heights study.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sharon. I'm Susan. I was never a big advocate of clean communities in the first place, and I testified 6 years ago with the original plan when you were contemplating, or Barry at that time was contemplating, marching down the street, going into a community, convening a public outreach meeting, hearing complaints from unknown people, whether they live there or not, and then marching on a business or on targeted businesses, knocking on the door and saying, come on out, we want to talk to you about all these complaints. And that was when Barry invited me to be a part of that clean communities plan or project, and I was for Boyle Heights as well as San Bernardino. We had a number of conversations with Councilmember Huizar on this, and that was one of the points that I and others were trying to get across to him is you have a lot of businesses in the community of Boyle Heights, but do you know what you have here in terms of permitted and unpermitted businesses, or for that matter, even licensed or unlicensed businesses? And they didn't, and they just didn't want to take that extra step, either through code enforcement or some of the other city resources. I was glad to see that you guys at least did a cursory review going down one or two streets. Clean Communities passed, this year or last year, I guess it was, and by the city council. Oh, Clean Up, Green Up. Yeah, well, Clean Up, Green Up, that's right, yeah. And anyway, Clean Up, Green Up passed. We asked them to do that, to inventory these businesses, and there was just no political will to do that. If you are going to go forward with Clean Communities, I would certainly encourage you to continue that if you can. One of the things that bothers me with Clean Communities and Clean Up, Green Up is that I'm on the mailing list for Councilmember Huizar's weekly update to people, and they have adopted Clean Up, Green Up, and this is what they do now. It's a trash collection program by residents in the community.
Can't hear you, Bill.
It's a trash collection program by residents in the community. It says Clean Communities in Action. So I don't know if you copyrighted the name or not, but somebody else is using it for a completely different reason. Anyway, thank you for doing that. And if you're going to continue with Clean Communities, I'd still like to be a part of that effort. We want our businesses to be in compliance. We don't want any of our members getting tickets either. So this helps. It helps us, and it sort of serves to even the playing field out, where you have unpermitted and even unlicensed businesses, and then our people go to the extra effort of making these large investments. And it's very difficult for them to compete economically.
Two questions. The first is, do we have any data that says all of this work actually resulted in pollution reduction?
So as part of the Clean Communities Plan, there were two pilot studies that we conducted, one in Boyle Heights and one in San Bernardino. And what we did was we worked, we alternated the months and met with basically community representatives and other stakeholders, and really became intimate with those communities to understand what the air quality issues were. So what they did was then they identified the air quality issues that were unique to that particular geographic area, and then we asked them to rank it. And then so some of the programs will have emission reductions associated with it. Some programs that they identified won't. So this particular program that they had identified or as an issue was really the concern. I think the underlying concern is what Bill's saying, is the concern for leveling the playing field in terms of when we had met with Bill and Linda Holcomb from the the Spray Booths Association. They're saying, our folks are all complying, but the issue is for the folks that aren't. So we went and we with this effort. So this effort, although you may have a facility or two that didn't have a permit, now has a permit, we'll have to follow our rules and regulations. So there could be emission reductions associated with those individual facilities, but this particular one doesn't have a set of emission reductions associated with it. In the Boyle Heights, another issue was lead and Exide and that, and there are emission reductions associated with that as we promulgated that rule. So it kind of depends on the different program that we were moving forward with and implementing, and we asked the community, we worked with them for them to identify the issues and for them to rank it, and then we worked off of that list.
And any plans on doing a similar program like this in the San Bernardino community?
We did do, there was a the efforts were parallel in the city of San Bernardino and Boyle Heights. We ran the programs at the same time. And so the issues in San Bernardino were a little different. There were some commonality between the two, but the city of San Bernardino, they ranked their own issues, and we worked through that. And so probably the overwhelming, comment and theme was the rail yard, and the concern for the proximity for homes and residences near busy highways and streets, the 210. We did a lot of weatherization to try to address that. And in the last presentation we had, as we went through all of the different issues that were identified for the two communities, and the different projects and programs we implemented over the years. And so we have a targeted airshed grant that we're finishing up, 2.9 million, that we've split between the two communities. As we finish up that airshed grant, then we'll wrap up these pilot studies for San Bernardino and Boyle Heights to summarize all the different efforts that we've done and how we've addressed the issues that were raised in the community. And then the next piece of it was, can we develop a template that other cities and communities could use in the future for kind of this, template for a clean communities type program. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions, anyone? Bill?
Yeah, Susan, you might you might familiarize Board Member Rutherford here about the Enrich study, Dr. Samet, and that came out of Clean Communities, not Samet, Surratt, from Loma Linda University, on the extent of pollutants and toxic air contaminants from that rail yard in concentric circles going out. If she hadn't seen that, I think she might be interested in that.
okay. So we had a contract with Loma Linda University to look at the health effects, and they had done analysis in the city of San Bernardino and interviewing different residences in the area and looking at a variety of different health metrics, and came out with conclusions and recommendations. But some of the interesting things that came out of that study, I think, was, as we were meeting with Dr. Surratt and his team, was that they were finding that there were underlying, concerns in terms of the air quality and proximity to certain diesel sources, but also as they would meet with different families and their knowledge about, how to address asthma and health effects, and are the children properly using asthma inhalers and things like that. So I think he helped to spur some other ideas that we could spin off in terms of asthma education, and is the proper use of inhalers, and also the concern for proximity in terms of the diesel sources kind of reaffirmed our concern. But there wasn't any gigantic I think point from there that I think we weren't already aware of in terms of our concern.
All right, any other questions on that item? All right, item 7 is a written report. It's attached. Any other business that we'd like to have come forward, members? David?
One question, actually, it's in the package we have here.
Sure.
And I appreciate the draft board agenda. In that, there's an item about the back guidelines, which, as a member of the back scientific committee, I was kind of surprised it's going to stationary and to the board, because our comments have not been incorporated in the document and given back to the committee members. So I don't know if this is a good comment back for stationary, but I just saw this, wanted to thank you for putting it in here. If it's something that is of concern, maybe directing staff to go back to the committee would be appreciated. That's essentially what my comments will be back to staff.
Got all that, Derek? Okay. Thank you. Rita?
Yes, I wanted to echo those comments. I found out about the May meeting of the BACT committee after the fact, and I was actually working with staff to give them information, but I didn't think it was a high priority because I hadn't heard Certainly that it wasn't going to the board in October. So I would definitely appreciate the time to get that information together, and because we have members that have offered to provide the information, but the BACT issue has been going on for many, many years, and they hadn't met for many years, and I hadn't heard anything about the BACT Scientific Review Committee. So I was surprised to find out that it happened in May, and I was even more surprised to find out that it's going to Stationary Source Committee. And adding to the complication, since I will be on vacation for that Friday, I won't even be at the committee to make comments. So I definitely would appreciate time on that issue. Thank you.
Well, being that we approved the agenda at the admin committee meeting, I'm not sure if we can pull it back, but I'll find out. So if it's stationary, we can probably look at that.
Yeah, but I think at the board, if someone wants to pull it.
Yeah, right. Well, right, at the board, sure. Okay. Paul?
Ben, are you on Sandbag?
No, I'm not in that county.
Okay,
I'm down in Riverside.
got it.
Yep, so I'm on WRCOG. Anything else? Nope. All right, any public comment? Don't all jump up at once. All right, we'll move to adjourn. The next meeting will be October 14th here at 11:30. Thank you all for coming.
I have something special for you.
Constituent outreach, I like it.
Who's that? Bobby Chacon.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Oh, man, oh, man. Oh, you know, I made a comment. There was a public policy comment in public policy, 20 elected political people were there in Riverside at the Fox Theater.
Yeah.
Josie stands up, right?
Yeah.
And says, and echoed by 3 or 4 supporters. Do you know that Sandbag just got this large amount of money, federal money, grant like 59 million or 60 million? And part of that, AQMD is supposed to do this because they got about 20 million in front of everybody, right?
Do what?
Well, then of course, a couple questions came in, and it's for air quality and just generalities, but there was no substance to it because it was public policy, and everybody got 2 cents, and it was okay.
Yeah.
It was okay. I mean, I've been to better, but it's okay.
Yeah.
If you were a member of Sandbag, I wanted to ask you that because is it true?
Yes.
Janice? Yes. Hi, Janice. How you doing? 6 weeks ago, maybe 7, because it's hot as blazes. I'm in Riverside at the Fox Theater. Public policy. Everybody there was somebody who was there in a full